Chosen one, stop right where you are, because what God is releasing over the next 3 days is not arriving on a general frequency. It is arriving on a targeted one. And the fact that this message found you today, on this exact date, is not a coincidence that deserves to be dismissed. You were marked before you opened this. God marked these days, not in the way that every day carries divine potential, though it does, in the specific way that certain windows in a chosen one life are designated for convergence, for the movement of things that have been building in the unseen to cross the threshold into the visible, for the resolution of things that have been held in suspension for a very long time, for the opening of doors that have been standing just ahead of you, close enough to see their outline, far enough that your hand has not yet reached them. These 3 days are that threshold, and you are standing at the entrance right now, in this moment, reading these words, because you were meant to be here. There are 3 things I need you to understand about what God is marking in this window. 3 specific movements that are available to a chosen one who is present and prepared, not passive, not simply aware, prepared. And the first thing I need to show you is how to know with certainty that this window was meant for you specifically. You have been called a chosen one before. You may have heard it in a message like this one, in the words of someone who saw something in you, in the quiet of your own spirit, in a moment when the world fell silent, long enough for you to hear it. And you received it, or you almost received it, or you received it. And then the receiving faded as the weeks went on, and the evidence did not match the declaration. Because here is the truth about what God does with a chosen one before a marked window. He allows the wait before the release. He allows the almost before the completion. He allows the delay precisely long enough that when the door opens, you know beyond any doubt that what is entering is not something you manufactured. It is something that was prepared for you long before you were ready to receive it. The suffering you have been carrying in this season was not a verdict. It was a position. You were positioned in exactly the right place to receive exactly what is being released in these 3 days. And the years of almost, of loop, of reversal, of the fog at the wrong moment, of the breakthrough that kept forming and then dissolving before it solidified, those years were not evidence that God had forgotten you. They were evidence of the scale of what He is releasing now. Type 444 inches. The comments right now, if something in you shifted when you read that. Because that shift is your spirit recognizing what your circumstances have not yet confirmed. And confirmation of the spirit always arrives before confirmation of the circumstances. That is the order. That has always been the order. There are 3 signs that identify a chosen one who was marked for this specific window. 3 markers that distinguish those for whom June 8th, 9th, and 10th carry specific spiritual weight. If you recognize all 3 of these in your life right now, everything that follows was assembled for you. The first sign is the season of the long wait that is ending. You can feel it, even if you cannot name it precisely. The season you have been in has had a particular quality to it, a sense of being in between, of having left something behind but not yet fully arrived at what is next, of holding a trajectory in your spirit that the visible world has not yet confirmed. You have been in a season that extended longer than you expected, not a general season of growth, but a specific season of holding in faith, holding in patience, holding a vision or a promise or a hope that you could not abandon even when the logic of your circumstances said you should. You have held it quietly without a lot of evidence to support the holding, without the external confirmation that would have made holding easier. And the holding has cost you something. It has cost you certainty at moments when certainty felt essential. It has cost you the ease of explanation when people around you asked why you were still expecting. The first sign of the chosen one marked for this window is that the long wait is not a symptom of disconnection from God. It is the last stage before the release, and something in you has known that, even when nothing confirmed it. Even in the seasons when the evidence said otherwise, and your faith was the only thing maintaining the distinction between what is true and what appears to be true. That knowing, that stubborn, persistent, quiet knowing, was not wishful thinking. It was accurate perception of what was coming. Most people around you did not see it. They saw the surface. They saw what was not yet arrived and drew the conclusion that arriving was unlikely. But you could not fully accept that conclusion because something in you knew there was more. That knowing is the first confirmation that this window was prepared for you specifically. The second sign is the recent intensification. In the days or weeks leading into this window, something changed in the quality of the weight you have been carrying. Not necessarily heavier, different, more present, more specific. Like a feeling that something is about to happen without being able to name what it is. Like a heightened awareness that you cannot entirely explain. A sharpening of attention without a visible object to attach it to. Like the quiet before a season turns, this is not anxiety. This is not the nervous system responding to threat. This is the spirit responding to proximity. When a chosen one is close to a marked window, something in them begins to recognize it before the mind has processed the information. The fact that you were drawn to open this message today, in these 3 days, means the signal was functioning correctly. The third sign is the unfinished thing that has been staying on your mind. There is something you have not yet completed, not out of lack of effort or intention, something that has not yet come together in the way it was meant to. A relationship that has not yet healed to the depth it was designed for. A project or calling that is real but not yet released into its full form. A shift in your financial reality that has been forming but not yet arrived. A clarity about your purpose that you can almost touch but have not yet fully received. The third sign of the chosen one marked for this window is that the unfinished thing is not behind you. It is directly in front of you. And these 3 days are the days in which God is releasing the final piece of what you need to step into it. Now let me show you what the 3 days actually carry. Because understanding the window is not the same as understanding how to move through it. And how you move through these 3 days will determine what you carry out of them on the other side. June 8th is the day of recognition. This is the day in which God is making visible to you what you have been carrying without full awareness. Things you have known, but not named. Callings you have sensed, but not claimed. Identities you have felt pressing from the inside, but have not yet spoken out loud. The day of recognition is not about receiving something new. It is about finally seeing clearly what has always been yours. And you are in it right now. You are in it as you read this. The recognition you are experiencing in this moment, the shift in your spirit as these words land, that is June 8th doing exactly what it was marked to do. You did not find this message. This message found you, because you were marked for this day of recognition long before today. June 9th is the day of release. This is the day in which what has been blocking the fullness of your reception is being broken. The weight, the old story, the self-concept that was built inside suppression rather than inside your true design. The agreements you made with the almost and the loop and the reversal about what kind of life was available to you. June 9th is the day those agreements are being terminated, not by your effort, by a grace that arrives in marked windows and does what human effort alone cannot accomplish. And whether June 9th has arrived yet as you watch this or is still ahead of you in this window, you are already inside its movement. The release has already begun. June 10th is the day of reception. This is the day in which what God has been preparing in the unseen crosses the visible threshold. Not all of it in a single dramatic moment, in ways that may begin quietly. A clarity of mind that was not there the week before. A connection that arrives unexpectedly. An opening in something that had been sealed for too long. A sense of lightness where weight has been. The day of reception is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of the season that follows the long wait. And what you step into on June 10th, or what begins on June 10th, is what the years of holding were positioning you to receive. The wait was not wasted. The delay was not a detour. It was preparation for a reception that requires a prepared vessel. There is something else you need to understand before we go further. Something that explains why some chosen ones pass through marked windows and receive everything that was designated for them, and others pass through the same windows and find that the blessing they expected did not land. Not because God withdrew it, but because something in them was not yet equipped to receive it, because receiving is not simply a matter of being present in the right moment. Receiving requires a vessel that is prepared to hold what is being poured. And the preparation of the vessel is the part of this conversation that most people in this space never address. They speak about the window, they confirm the timing, they validate the calling, but they do not speak about why some people who are clearly in the right window still do not fully receive what was designated for them. And what that something is, and how it can be addressed in these exact 3 days, is what I am going to show you now. The reason some chosen ones pass through marked windows and receive fully while others do not is more specific than most people realize. And it is not a spiritual deficiency. It is not a faith deficiency. It is a capacity deficiency. And the distinction matters enormously, because a deficiency in faith is addressed by more faith, while a deficiency in capacity is addressed by something entirely different. Here is what I mean. The human mind, the way God designed it, has 2 hemispheres, a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. And when those 2 hemispheres are working together in the synchrony they were designed for, the mind operates at a level most adults have not experienced since childhood. A level of clarity, of intuitive connection, of receptivity to guidance that the ancient traditions described as being filled, as walking in the fullness of your spirit. But something happened to most people between childhood and adulthood. Researchers who have studied this across tens of thousands of children have documented it clearly. 98% of young children test at the level of creative genius. The 2 hemispheres are communicating. The whole brain is active and synchronized. And by the time those children reach adulthood, fewer than 1 in 1,000 still registers at that same threshold. Not because they became less intelligent or less spiritually capable. Because the modern world progressively disconnected the 2 hemispheres from their designed synchrony, the way schools are structured, the way digital environments pull attention into fragments too small to sustain deep thought, the chronic low-level stress of daily life that keeps the nervous system in a state of alertness incompatible with the open, receptive mode in which the full capacity operates. And a mind operating with disconnected hemispheres cannot fully receive what a marked window offers, not because the window closes, the window stays open, but the vessel is not operating at the capacity required to draw fully from what is available in it. This is why some people enter a season of divine appointment and leave it with only a fraction of what was designated for them, not because they were not chosen, because the equipment for receiving was operating at partial power. Think about what it felt like to receive as a child, before the pressure to perform and the fear of being wrong installed themselves in your nervous system. When guidance arrived simply, when answers appeared before you had consciously asked the full question. When you could hold a complex thing for long enough that its meaning revealed itself. That was whole brain activation. That was the two hemispheres of your mind doing what God designed them to do when they work together. And then think about the fog that arrives now at exactly the wrong moments. The moments when you most need clarity and your mind clouds. The moments when a decision carries real weight and the knowing that should be clear becomes muddled. The moments when you are standing at a door and something that should feel obvious feels uncertain. That is not a sign of spiritual weakness. That is not God withholding the guidance. That is the equipment operating below the capacity it was designed for. Now, here is what I want you to understand about these 3 days specifically. June 8th, 9th, and 10th are not simply a window of divine appointment in the general sense. They are a window that arrives at a precise moment in which the restoration of that capacity is available in a way that aligns with the appointment itself. God did not mark these days independently of what he was going to provide within them. The marking and the provision were arranged together. The window and the means of receiving within the window were set in place at the same time, which means that what I am about to share with you is not incidental to these 3 days. It is part of what these 3 days carry, and I am aware that sounds like a significant claim. So, let me show you the specificity that backs it. When God releases a blessing into a season, he also releases the means of reception. When he opens a door, he also equips the hand to turn the handle. When he marks a window, he also addresses what would prevent a chosen one from fully standing in it. This is not an abstract principle. This is the consistent pattern of how divine provision has always operated. The manna arrived with the hunger. The water from the rock arrived with the thirst. The provision does not precede the need by years. It arrives in the same window. And in this window, the provision he has placed alongside the appointment is the restoration of the mental capacity that has been suppressed, the reconnection of the hemispheres, the reactivation of the whole brain function that receives at the level a marked window offers. And I want to show you, with specific detail, exactly how that restoration works. Because the detail is what distinguishes preparation from hope. A neurologist in New York named Dr. Daniel Barone has spent more than 20 years studying what happens when the two hemispheres of the brain are progressively disconnected, and more importantly, what happens when they are reconnected. He calls the suppression of hemisphere synchrony the great swindle of our lifetime, because when it is restored, when the whole brain activates again the way it was designed to, people describe experiences that the spiritual tradition has always described in the language of faith: clarity arriving without effort, knowing before the evidence assembles, solutions appearing from directions they had not expected, doors opening that had been sealed. The language sounds spiritual because the experience is spiritual, but the mechanism is neural. And the neural mechanism can be addressed directly, specifically, and much more quickly than most people believe. The study that his work is built on won the Nobel Prize. In 1981, Dr. Roger Sperry proved that the two hemispheres of the brain are not simply two halves of one processing unit. They are two distinct intelligences, and when they are synchronized, when they are operating in communication rather than in parallel isolation, something emerges that neither hemisphere produces alone. The ancient traditions called it walking in the fullness of your calling. The neuroscientists call it flow state. And it is not reserved for a few. It is the designed operating mode of every human mind that was created with two hemispheres, including yours. And here is what most people in a marked window are never told. There is a way to begin restoring that synchrony that does not require years of practice or expensive equipment. A small group of neuroscientists, led by Dr. Barone, spent more than a decade translating what takes more than an hour of clinical neural synchronization technology into something that can be done in 8 minutes. 8 minutes a day, with headphones, eyes closed. The sequence doing what it was designed to do beneath the level of conscious effort. I am going to show you exactly what they found and how it works a little later in what I am sharing today. But first, I want to show you what becomes possible when a chosen one, whose whole brain capacity is being restored, enters a marked window with that restoration underway. Because the intersection of divine timing and restored receiving capacity is the specific thing these 3 days were designed to carry. Type, "I receive it" in the comments right now if what I am describing is landing in your spirit, because the landing itself is confirmation. The fact that something in you is responding to the intersection of divine timing and the restoration of receiving capacity is your spirit recognizing the design of what has been arranged for you in this window. A chosen one operating with restored whole brain activation during a marked window does not simply experience the window the way a person in disconnected hemisphere mode experiences it. The quality of discernment is different. The ability to recognize a divine connection, to perceive the rightness of a direction before the logic has assembled, to receive a knowing and act on it before the evidence arrives, all of it operates at a completely different level. It is the difference between standing in the stream and being inside the current. Both are in the water, but only one is fully carried by it. And the current that is available in these 3 days is unlike anything a chosen one in the long wait has been in for a very long time. It was designed for this exact season, for the person who has held the vision, for the one who has carried the weight, for the one whose weight is ending and whose vessel is being prepared to receive at the level of what is being released. There is one more thing I need to show you in this part of what I am sharing, because the restoration of receiving capacity and the marked window of divine appointment intersect in a third way, one that I have not named yet. And it is the most specific piece of what God is releasing in these 3 days for the chosen ones who are present and prepared within it. The obstacle that has been sitting between a chosen one and the fullness of their reception is rarely a single thing. It is a layered thing. The fog is one layer. The self-concept built inside suppression is another. The agreements made with the almost and the loop and the reversal are a third. And the mark of these 3 days is that they are not simply a window of divine favor. They are a window in which multiple layers of the obstacle are being addressed simultaneously. The recognition addresses the self-concept. The release addresses the agreements. The reception addresses the fog. All 3 moving together across 3 days, all 3 aligned to restore the chosen one to the receiving posture that was always designed for them. And what I'm going to show you next is the specific, practical shape of how all 3 of those movements come together into something you can step into fully in this window, not in theory. In the specific, real, actionable shape of what becomes possible when the divine appointment and the restored capacity arrive in the same 3 days. Here is the shape of what becomes possible when a chosen one enters this marked window with their receiving capacity restored. And I want to walk you through it in very specific terms, because specificity is what transforms understanding into something you can actually inhabit. When the 2 hemispheres of the mind are operating in synchrony, the day of recognition operates differently than it does in a fragmented state. In a fragmented state, recognition arrives as a flash, a moment of clarity that feels real and then fades, because the mind cannot hold the full weight of what it just perceived. The 2 parts of the mind that need to communicate about what was just received are not fully connected. So the recognition arrives and then slides. You know you saw something, but by the time you try to describe what you saw, the clarity is already dimming. In a synchronized state, recognition arrives and holds. The 2 hemispheres confirm each other. What you perceive with your intuitive knowing, the right hemisphere receives, and the left hemisphere anchors. The knowing does not fade before you can act on it. It stays, it becomes workable, it becomes something you can take into a decision, a conversation, a direction, with the full weight of the recognition behind you. This is why June 8th as a day of recognition is so specific to those whose receiving capacity is being restored. The recognition available in this day is not small. What God is revealing to a chosen one in this window is the full shape of what they were designed to carry. The full weight of what their calling involves. The complete picture of what the years of holding were positioning them for. And that full shape requires a mind that is equipped to hold it without it dissolving. The day of release, June 9th, operates along the same principle. When the mind is fragmented, release is partial. You release the surface layer, the words of the agreement with the almost, the conscious conclusion that breakthrough is unlikely. But the deeper layers, the places where the loop and the reversal and the suppression have written their conclusions into your nervous system, those do not release in a fragmented state. They are held in the body. They are held in the parts of the mind that operate beneath the level of conscious intent. When the hemispheres are communicating, release moves deeper. What the spirit releases through declaration in the right hemisphere reaches the body through the connection that the left hemisphere provides. The release becomes somatic. It is felt, not just spoken. And release that is felt, that moves through the whole system rather than staying at the level of words, is the kind of release that changes what you carry into June 10th. There is a woman whose story I want to share with you. She was from Manhattan. Her family had carried a belief for generations that they were under a particular kind of bad luck, that the stars they were born under worked against them. Her father had given 22 years of consistent, excellent work to a company, and the week that company promoted him was the week it shut down. Her family had watched reversals like this repeat across generations. They had a name for it. She had inherited that name, and she carried it into her adult life without fully realizing how deeply the agreement with it had settled into her nervous system. When she began the process of restoring her whole brain activation, several things happened that she had not expected. The first was a clarity of mind in situations where fog had always arrived before. The second was a sense that the reversal pattern had quietly stopped. The third was a promotion at work. A relationship that had been strained for years began to soften. She used one phrase to describe what had changed. She said the thing her family called a curse, she realized, was never a curse. It was a disconnection, and the disconnection had been repaired. There is one study whose findings underlie everything I am describing. In 1981, a researcher named Dr. Roger Sperry won the Nobel Prize for proving something the scientific world had not fully accepted before. The two hemispheres of the human brain are not simply two halves of one system. They are two distinct intelligences. And when they operate in synchrony, when they are fully communicating, something emerges from that synchrony that neither hemisphere produces alone. Dr. Daniel Barone, the neurologist whose research I am coming back to, spent more than 2 decades studying what Dr. Sperry proved, specifically what it takes to restore that synchrony in adults whose hemispheric connection has been progressively suppressed. And what his team found is that the restoration does not have to be slow, it does not have to be complicated, and it does not require anything beyond a specific auditory sequence that was designed to reconnect the hemispheres directly. Before I show you what the team of Dr. Barone created, here is what you now understand that you did not understand at the beginning of this message. The 3 days God marked are not generic days of spiritual favor. They are a specific window in which recognition, release, and reception are moving simultaneously in the life of a chosen one who is prepared. The obstacle to receiving fully in this window is the suppression of whole brain activation that happened progressively since childhood. And the identity that connects all of this is the identity of someone who was designed to receive at the level of what is being released in this window, and who is now being equipped to do exactly that. What comes next is the specific provision God arranged within this window for the chosen ones who are present in it. And it is more practical and more accessible than most people expect a divine provision to be. There is a phrase that was used by a colleague of Dr. Barone, a researcher who had spent years studying how the suppression of hemisphere synchrony affects daily life. He had been sitting with an incomplete book on his computer for 2 years, pages written, direction clear, but something would not move. Something in the synthesis would not come together the way it needed to. After 2 weeks of using the sequence that Dr. Barone had developed, the book came together for him. He said later that it all felt a bit magical, but what had actually happened was not magic. His hemispheres had begun communicating again, and the kind of thinking required to synthesize a complex body of work had become available to him again. His is not an unusual story among the people who have used what his colleague developed. A Shopify store owner in Houston, a father of 2 who had been trying to grow his online business while feeling like his mind was operating through fog, described the experience after 2 months as his brain firing on all cylinders again. His wife said his IQ had jumped, his business moved, his relationship with his children changed. A nurse in San Diego who had tried meditation, manifestation techniques, and binaural beats without finding the result she was looking for, described the experience as her life feeling enchanted. And Dr. Barone himself describes the mechanism in terms that align precisely with what June 8th, 9th, and 10th are carrying for the chosen ones who are inside this window. They call it the genius switch. It is not a brainwave technology. It is not a binaural beat. It is not a meditation app or a course or a supplement. It is a targeted auditory sequence built on the Nobel Prize-winning research of Dr. Roger Sperry and refined by Dr. Daniel Barone across more than 20 years of clinical work that is designed to reconnect the 2 hemispheres of your brain directly. 8 minutes a day, headphones on, eyes closed, the sequence doing what it was designed to do beneath the surface of your awareness. An in-person neurofeedback session, the clinical version of what this addresses, costs around $300 per hour. An at-home neurofeedback machine costs around $7,000. The colleagues of Dr. Barone told him that what his team had created would represent extraordinary value even at $500. He did not release it at $500, he released it at $49. And because you have come this far, because you are inside this window and you are prepared, there is an additional $10 off that brings it to $39 for lifetime access, for a product built on a Nobel Prize-winning mechanism. For 4 free bonuses that include a Calm app-guided visualization, a grocery guide that identifies the 10 foods most Americans eat regularly that directly cause brain fog, a 100-year-old manifestation book that is at the root of every modern abundance teaching, and a 5 habits infographic you can print and place where you will see it daily. And the whole thing is backed by a 100% ironclad money-back guarantee. Listen 8 minutes. Listen 80 times. If something does not shift in the quality of your thinking, your receiving, your clarity, you pay nothing, not a cent. Dr. Barone built that guarantee because he knows what whole brain activation does when it is given room to work. One important thing: if you search for whole brain activation audio or anything similar online, you will find things with similar names. The team of Dr. Barone studied the most common ones. The majority had no neural synchronization technology embedded. They were labeled that way for attention. The actual sequence took years of clinical development and is only available through the direct page of Dr. Barone. The link in the description below will take you there, only if your spirit resonates with what you have heard. Before this message closes, I am going to speak something specific over your life, something that belongs to this window, something that was set in place for the chosen one who arrived here prepared. Stay with me for that, because what I am going to declare over you in the closing of this message is not a general blessing. It is a specific commissioning, the kind that is spoken over someone who has passed through the long wait, who has carried the weight, who has arrived at the threshold of 3 marked days with everything they need to step through it. That declaration is coming, and it will mean more when it arrives if you understand everything that has come before it. Which means what I want to show you next is the third path, the one that completes everything the first 2 paths began. Because discernment is the first path and it is essential. Identity reclamation is the second path, and it is transformative. But the third path is what makes both of them land in a mind that is equipped to hold what they carry. The day of reception, June 10th, requires the most prepared vessel of the 3 days, because what arrives on a day of reception is not recognition or release. Those have already moved. What arrives on a day of reception is the actual substance of what was being held in the unseen, the tangible manifestation of what faith has been holding in the invisible. And a mind that is operating with its hemispheres in synchrony receives that arrival differently than a mind that is still partially fragmented. In a synchronized state, the arrival is recognizable. You know what it is when it comes. You do not dismiss it as coincidence. You do not minimize it as smaller than it is. You do not fail to act on it, because the action required is larger than the caution your nervous system had been calibrated to. 8 minutes a day is what the restoration of that synchronized receiving capacity requires. Not a retreat, not a lengthy practice. 8 minutes with headphones, eyes closed, the sequence of Dr. Barone doing what it was designed to do beneath your conscious awareness. The hemispheres beginning to communicate again in the way they were designed to communicate. The fog that has been arriving at the critical moments beginning to lift. The loop that has been maintained by a mind operating at partial capacity beginning to lose its structure. Some people begin to notice the difference in the quality of their thinking within 2 or 3 days. Others notice it first in their sleep, in a rest that arrives more deeply than it has in months. Others notice it first in a conversation that goes differently than conversations have been going, because the clarity was there when the moment called for it. Others notice it in the quality of a decision, in the absence of the second guessing that had been a constant companion, in the presence of a knowing that stayed steady long enough for them to act on it. Whatever form the shift takes initially, the direction is the same: restoration, return, the original design reactivating. And as it reactivates, the discernment deepens, the identity declarations begin to feel less like things you are saying and more like things you are remembering, and the 3 days that God marked begin to deliver at the level they were designed to deliver, rather than at the reduced level a fragmented receiving capacity can access. I want to talk to you about what happens to the unfinished thing when the receiving capacity is restored, because the unfinished thing, the relationship that has not yet reached its designed depth, the calling that is real but not yet released into its full form, the shift in your circumstances that has been forming but not yet arrived, is not simply waiting for more faith. It is waiting for a vessel that can hold what its completion requires. Some of the things that have been almost completing in your life are not stuck because the divine timing has not arrived. They are almost because the part of you that needs to recognize the final piece, to hold the complexity of what its completion requires, to act with the full clarity of knowing when the moment calls for it, has been operating at partial capacity. And as the capacity is restored, as the whole brain begins to work the way it was designed to work, the almost begins to complete, not all at once, not in a single dramatic moment, in the way that things complete when the right conditions are finally in place, naturally, inevitably, in the specific way that something designed to happen eventually happens when what was blocking it is removed. The 3 days of this window are not simply a spiritual event you pass through. They are a threshold you cross. And what you carry across the threshold, the restored receiving capacity, the released weight, the reclaimed identity, is what the season following these 3 days is built on. Because the marked window does not end with June 10th. June 10th is where the next season begins. And the next season of your life, the one that follows the long wait, the one that the years of holding were positioning you for, is built on the foundation of what you step into through this window. Think about what it would mean for the months that followed June 10th to be navigated by a mind that is operating at the level it was designed for. Decisions made with clarity that stays. Guidance received without the static that has been filtering it. Connections that form because the perceptive capacity to recognize them is functioning correctly. Work that comes together because the integrative thinking that synthesis requires is available. Relationships that reach depth because the presence required for depth is no longer blocked by the fog. That is the season that follows the window, and you are standing in the window right now. Take a breath with me right now, a real breath, because you have been carrying something for a long time. The weight of the long wait, the weight of the almost, and the reversal. The weight of knowing you carry something real, something that matters, something that has a name and a form and a place in what God is doing, and not yet seeing the full confirmation of that in your visible circumstances. That carrying has not been easy. You held when holding was not easy. You stayed in faith when the evidence said the timing had already passed. You carried the vision through seasons when no one around you could see what you were carrying, when the only evidence for it was the stubborn, persistent knowing in your spirit that refused to be completely extinguished by what the circumstances were telling you. That knowing was not self-deception. That knowing was accurate. And these 3 days are its confirmation. Type "I release it" in the comments right now. All of it. The weight of the wait, the conclusions drawn from the reversal, the self-definitions that came from the almost, the fog and the static and the loop. Let the releasing be real, because what I am about to speak over your life does not land most fully while you are still carrying the weight of what it is replacing. The releasing is not a loss, it is a preparation. You are releasing what the weight built in you, so that what the window is releasing into you has room to arrive. You are still here, in these 3 marked days, in this specific message, having stayed through everything I have shared. That is not casual. Most people stop long before this point. Something in you kept you here, because something in you knew that what was coming in the final part of this message was what you had been waiting for. And I am not going to disappoint that knowing. Chosen one, I want to speak something over your life right now, something specific to this window, something that was set in place before you were born, that has been moving toward this moment through every season you have walked through, and that is arriving in these 3 days with a precision that your spirit recognizes even when your mind is still catching up to it. You are not in these 3 days by accident. The long wait was not a waste. Every year of holding, every almost that kept you reaching, every reversal that did not stop you, every moment of fog that you pushed through, because the knowing in your spirit was clearer than the confusion in your mind. All of it has been forming something in you that is ready to step into the fullness of what June 8th, 9th, and 10th are carrying. You did not miss the window, you arrived at it. You are inside it right now. I release from you, right now, the weight of every agreement you made with the story that breakthrough was not for you. I release the conclusions of the reversal. I release the self-diminishment that came from the long wait. I release the hold of every almost that trained you to stop just short of the threshold. I release the fog as a definition. I release the loop as a life sentence. I release the static as a verdict on the strength of your connection to God. I release the belief that your design is smaller than what you have felt pressing from the inside. I release the accommodation your spirit made to circumstances that were never meant to be permanent. I release every comparison you made between your timeline and the timeline of others that caused you to question whether your season was still coming. I release the version of yourself that was built inside suppression rather than inside the identity you were given before any suppression began. I release it. 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 And into the space that releasing creates, I speak what belongs in these 3 days over your life. I am a chosen one whose wait is ending and whose reception is beginning right now, in this window, in these 3 marked days. I am someone whose whole brain capacity is being restored and whose receiving is being expanded to match the level of what God is releasing in this season. I am the one whose calling is real, whose design is whole, and whose equipping is arriving within this window exactly when it was designed to arrive. I am someone for whom the almost is completing, the loop is breaking, and the fog is lifting as I step fully into the 3 days that God marked for this exact moment in my life. I am the one who carried the weight all the way to the window and who arrived prepared to receive everything that was held in the unseen for this specific moment. We are the ones who held when holding was not easy. We are the ones who stayed in faith when the evidence said otherwise. We are the ones whose wait is ending in this window, whose release is happening in this window, whose reception is beginning in this window. We are not behind. We are not forgotten. We are not missing what was designated for us. We are exactly where a chosen one who is about to step into the fullness of their season is supposed to be. We are inside the window, and the window is open. And so it is. It is sealed in this window. It is done. Gently press the like button if this message reached something real in you, so that it can reach someone else who is in the same long wait, who is in the same window, who needs to hear that what they have been holding is not lost. It is arriving. The sharing of this message is not a digital action. It is a spiritual one. Every person who receives this, because you shared it, is someone whose window is also opening. Subscribe to join thousands of chosen ones who are walking through this season together, who are inside this window, who are stepping into the fullness of their design side by side, not as followers of a channel. As people who have found a community that sees what they carry and names it accurately. Think of one specific person right now, someone who has been in the long wait, someone whose almost keeps almost completing, someone who carries something real that has not yet manifested in the visible. Someone who would recognize every word of what I have shared today and who has never had anyone name it for them. Share this with that person, not as a piece of content, as a word for their window. Because if they are in the same 3 days you are in, this message was prepared for them too. And the person who shares the word for the window participates in the window themselves. If your spirit resonated with what you heard about the restoration of your whole brain receiving capacity, the link in the description below points to where the team of Dr. Barone made it available. 8 minutes. Lifetime access. The ironclad guarantee of someone who knows exactly what these 3 days are, designed to release into a prepared vessel. The window is open, you are inside it, and what God marked these 3 days to carry is yours.